If you would, bow your heads, please, and let's observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome to the Murfreesboro City Council, Monday, May 16th, 2011. We appreciate all of you being here, and we're going to begin our budget review tonight for the 2011-2012 fiscal year, which would begin July the 1st of 2011 and go through the calendar or through the fiscal year till June 30th of 2012. We have a number of items to go through today. If you don't have an agenda with you, there are agendas available, and you would be able to follow along as we're going through this. Our first speaker will be the city manager, Mr. Lyons, who is going to give us a brief budget overview, I believe, at this time. Mr. Lyons.
Mayor, I'd like to perhaps take the next 10 minutes, give you all an overview of the budget process this year, talk a little bit about where we've been, where we're going. I'm going to cover some ground. Budget isn't necessarily the most interesting topic, but over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to take you from Abraham Lincoln to Marty McFly to Paul Latour. So our proposed budget this year, cover, we've got a photograph of Cannonsburg. Going to take a look back at what we've accomplished over the last year, talk a little bit about our budget goals, our revenue, our expenditures, and then you'll begin the process of reviewing the departmental budgets. Maybe a good place to start is to talk about what we're trying to accomplish with our budget. Obviously, our budget becomes a policy setting document. It's a financial plan. It's an operations guide. And it's also become a communication device. We hope this document helps our community understand what the city has planned for the upcoming years. They provide input to us throughout this process. 2011 is certainly going to be a milestone year. City is going to start its bicentennial celebration. And also, Middle Tennessee State University turns 100 this year. So there'll be activities in the coming year celebrating both of those occasions. So let's perhaps begin by what's happened since you adopted the last budget. One of the big goals last year was customer service training. We've worked hard with our city employees to emphasize and focus on that. The Service Excellence Program is how we've branded that. We've developed the course material, trained the trainers, and we'll be rolling that training sessions out for our city employees, and you'll hear more about that as we go through the budget process. The new Chamber of Commerce building and visitor center was completed. The Human Resource Department is meeting with every single city employee over the next couple weeks over the new employee benefits program. We completed 2 study groups from city employees who offered some great suggestions about things they'd like to see and how we might operate. We diversified the city's debt portfolio. Police Department responded over 92,000 calls for service, purchased 2 fire trucks. This one's, I think, out at Station 7. $5.3 million in property was saved by the fire department. Certainly a credit to the hard work for those men and women. Also purchased some new software, amended the sign ordinance. You all are very familiar with several of our big road projects, Veterans Parkway, Leaf Avenue drainage improvements, Fortress Boulevard, Haynes Drive, and the Greenway project. We responded to 4 major winter storms, and most recently we just had another event a few weeks ago. We renovated the SportsCom pool, and that project has been a smashing success. Our attendance is up substantially. We hosted the U.S. Soccer President's Cup and have a larger event coming later on this year, and then we've starting to get close to finishing up a stormwater demonstration project at Old Fort Park. Now, Abraham Lincoln said the best thing about the future is it comes one day at a time. And so we're going to start talking about where we're going in the upcoming year. Last year's 4 building blocks of safe and livable neighborhoods, excellent service with a focus on customer service, and strong and sustainable financial health continue This year, we'd like to add a fourth priority and anchor point for our budget, and that is engaging our community. As Mr. Crumley and I attended some sessions last year at some professional development, we heard more and more communities trying to find new ways to reach out to their community and increase the dialogue. The city's already very active in this area. City TV, we have police and fire citizens academies, we have neighborhood meetings, our website. There's lots of opportunities for our community to have a conversation with the city, but we want to find new ways. Most recently, we just launched the city's first Facebook page, and that certainly is getting some good traction. So a few things in this year's budget. You're going to hear more about these items from the individual department heads, but on that first goal of safe and livable neighborhoods, we're going to continue a strong focus on our police and fire departments, including a renaming of the fire department to the Fire and Rescue Department. We're excited about that change. Those are the services they're already delivering, so we think this new name is more in keeping with what they actually provide. We want to begin a study of a new radio system. Manny Avenue project continues and the reconstruction of it. The Mitchell-Nielsen area has suffered from some drainage problems in the past, and we want to look at developing a plan to address the drainage in that neighborhood. A new park in western Murfreesboro will be in our short-term horizon. That project's going to take some time to develop, but we want to begin the process to identify the program elements and start looking for location. And then we've got several renovation projects: Kids Castle, McFadden. The Ag Center building, which is out at Old Fort Park, will be the new home for the Parks and Rec Department. Oakland's Park and continued expansions of the Greenway. The second goal of strong and sustainable financial health. This is our 13th consecutive year without a property tax increase. We're always proud about that. We've updated our compensation plan. I'll touch on that in a few minutes as well. The Human Resource Department, we mentioned, bid out the city's employee benefits package. That resulted in over 52 bids being received, evaluated, and studied. The result of that is we've saved over $400,000 in fixed costs. We've revised our fund transfers to more accurately calculate the costs borne by other city departments back to the general fund. That'll show up in your revenue budget. We're getting ready to redo the energy system here at City Hall. Our customer service program, as I mentioned, the Service Excellence program has been kicked off. The proposed budget recommends creating a new information technology department. Right now, all of our information technology personnel are scattered throughout the budget. We think it makes sense, and it's time for us to put them all under one roof. And one of the first things that department will be responsible for is developing an information technology master plan. We've got master plans for roads, and we've got master plans for neighborhoods, but the city certainly invests heavily in technology, and we think it makes sense to bundle all that together and create a master plan for our technology. The new transit shelters are under construction right now. As I mentioned, the new goal this year is engaging our community, finding new ways that we can continue to dialogue with our residents. As I mentioned, we've already been very active in this area, and we have several other ways that we think we can engage our community in a manner that's convenient to them and effective for city staff. We're also going to recommend that we take the city's public information officer, move that person into the cable TV department. Our cable TV department right now is already very active in providing information to our community, so we think putting all those folks under one roof will help us be consistent. When the city's got a story to tell, we want to make sure we cover that on the city's website, on the city's social media efforts, on the city cable TV channel, in the print media, and then with the Nashville television stations as well. So by unifying everybody in one space, we think we can do a more effective job on that. And the last bullet here is getting input on how we get input. Certainly want to look for ways that the residents would suggest. Turning our attention toward the revenue picture, the proposed budget's got almost $100 million in revenue. That's up a good amount from last year's budget. Where does our money come from? About a little more than a third comes from property tax. Almost a third comes from the local option sales tax, and the rest from various sources. I did rerun the number today. One thing I've shared with the council in the past is if we looked at a median house in Murfreesboro, what would they pay if we gave them a monthly bill for the city services? So if we gave them a monthly bill for police, fire, schools, parks and recreation, all of the other services provided by the city, out of their property tax bill, the median house in Murfreesboro would pay about $48 a month for all the services provided by the city. It's certainly something when you compare it to your cell phone bill, to your restaurant bill, your cable TV bill, all of those quite favorable comparisons to what it is that the city provides day in and day out. The revenue changes, the big 2% increase in property tax this year. Our base has grown some. That isn't an increase in the tax rate. That is an increase in the revenue received by the city. Our sales tax revenue is up almost 8% over last year's budget. We budgeted very conservatively last year because we were still in the midst of the recession. We have seen consumer confidence start to pick up. There's been some job growth, and so we're actually seeing a 1% over what we expect to receive this year. The largest increase in dollars in the budget this year is out of the sales tax, a little over $2 million. The biggest decrease was in building permits, which went down by $310,000. City's property tax rate remains at 1.2703. You can see over dating back to 1996, the city's property tax rate was almost $1 more. Our local sales tax revenues, as we mentioned, have continued to grow. The City Council has been very progressive in investing in the infrastructure, the roads, the interchanges, water and sewer lines, and we've continued to see strong retail growth, lots of hard work by the City, Chamber of Commerce, and others to see that continued investment, and has certainly paid off in the sales tax revenue growth. A very quick summary on our expenditures. Expenditures are almost $104 million in the proposed budget. We've moved the cable TV into the general fund. And then, as Ms. Wright may speak to this, as we get later on into the budget, the not GFOA, the GASB, which is a group that will be held accountable to when it comes time for the city audit, have redefined some of the ways we look at general fund activities as well as special revenue fund activities. The end result of that is we're going to be required to move the senior citizens, golf, recreation, solid waste, and part of the capital improvement funds into the general fund. So they won't, in the budget document that you have here, you'll have a special tab for special revenue funds. The ones I just mentioned, because of this definition change, now will be brought into the general fund. Certainly make the general fund become larger, but the total expense of the city isn't going to change. The general fund grew 4% over fiscal year 11. When you factor out the cable TV move, I mentioned the new the information technology department, and there is one new position in the budget compared to last year, and that would be for the IT director. The city's expenditures, 41% come from personnel costs, 40% come from fund transfers. That blue piece of the pie will shrink when those other funds do relocate to the general fund. The budget does recommend the use of fund balance, but this is something that the city has done traditionally. So Mr. Crumley put this graph together. Let me try to walk you through what it says. On the left-hand side, it shows what the city has budgeted in fund balance as of July 1 each year. You can see each year going back to 2003, the city has been most years between $2 and $4 million. However, that fund balance appropriation doesn't actually take place until we get to the end of the budget to see if expenditures are more than revenues. Now, here's the good news. If you look on the right-hand side, there's only 3 years. That would be 03, which is the green, the middle of the button. You've got I guess that would be periwinkle button going down about $4 million. And then we may use fund balance in the coming year. The large one, which is the periwinkle color, Mayor, that was the year we chose to purchase the land for the conference center. That was an intentional choice. But what ends up happening is that the city brings in more revenue than we typically budget, and just because you approve an expenditure budget does not mean we spend it all. So the good news there is, even though we always budget fund balance, it's only 3 times in the last 10 years that we've actually had to use it. So when you see the pink, orange, blue, on the other colors there going up on the right-hand side, those are all additions to fund balance as opposed to an expense. There's been a decrease of 53 city positions since fiscal year 09. As I mentioned, last year we were at 784 full-time employees. With the addition of the IT director, we would be up 1 to 785 this year. Let me speak very quickly on compensation, and then I'll wrap things up. The proposed budget does include a pay increase for city employees of 3.5%. Based on a survey of 13 cities, Murfreesboro had the highest recommended increase for their city employees than any of the other cities in the survey. I'll show you a graph on that in a second. This is also consistent with the pay plan update done by Burris and Associates. Now, this also includes an drop a step, add a step in order to make our pay more competitive. So we're going to take the old step 1 and it will fall off, and the new step 2 becomes step 1, and we'll add a new step 9 for most positions. So that gives hiring in 3.5% higher hiring in pay, and on the top out end it adds 3.5%, gives additional room for employees to grow. And also there was 1 year, I believe it was 2 years ago, we did not fund longevity pay. We left that out. That was a difficult budget year. This year I'm proposing that we add that back in, so the employees would not only get their 60% longevity pay that they would normally get, but we're going to go back $60 per year. They would get the additional $60 per year to make up for that 1 year we skipped it. This is a quick graph on the other cities that were surveyed in terms of what they were proposing for pay increases. Now, I don't believe any of these communities have adopted their budget, but based on what we heard, other managers and the recommendation, this is where we're at. You can see Brentwood was at 3%, Collierville 3%, Smyrna 2 3/4. So what's in the budget now puts our employees at the head of the class. We're certainly proud of the hard work they do day in and day out. And we've got several departments to review today. So, Mayor, that's just a very quick snapshot of the budget process. Certainly want to start off by thanking Ms. Wright, Mr. Crumley, especially thank Ms. Tucker. Ms. Tucker did all of the heavy lifting and document preparation. She worked long and hard on this, and her work is to be commended.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lyons. Obviously, I think the council is well aware that you have done an excellent job in the last several years in working to provide us with these written suggestions and goals and objectives for each of the departments, and I think that's helped all of us to look through the budget and use it as the tool that we've grown to accept over the last several years. I'm sure we all appreciate your emphasis on doing that. And let me say, too, before we start on our budget review and look at the general fund revenue, that I wanted to recognize our county commissioner, Shanto Serenho, is here. I want Shanto, please, to stand up. And also former council members Mary Scales and Bill Shacklet. They're here with our volunteer organizations, and even though they have served in this position and up here on this council, they continue to serve in our community, and we appreciate their efforts and what they do, and I wanted to recognize them. Thank you very much for being here. Are there any comments regarding Mr. Lyons' budget overview as it has been presented? All right, if there aren't any, then again we can begin looking at our general fund revenues, and those are found on pages 30 through 51 of the proposed budget as it's been presented. And there may be some questions or comments from the council members as we look through there. On page 30 and 31 you have the general fund revenue line item detail, and that points out that our total property tax revenue should be increased because of new activity in the last year, $717,000 to a total of near $36 million. The total tax equivalent payments, which some are state shared revenues, I believe, is that correct? Is that what we're looking at in the local sales tax and local beer tax? Are those state shared, or those are?
No, those are the local.
Those are locals. Yes. And also that gross receipts tax is where the state is now collecting our business fees. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I believe that line item, according to state officials, was supposed to increase dramatically. Has that not been the case?
Well, we're about to hit our first year where we can see a full cycle, and the biggest cycle is the one we're in right now. So we'll have a better idea this summer, because there is a delay in where we get the money from the state versus where we got it straight from the vendors.
Up front, all right. And that's in the gross receipts tax, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that detail is on page 44. That's what the state began last year attempting to collect for us. So that's the gross receipts tax. You see that the local sales taxes are budgeted to be up $2.2 million, and the total tax equivalent payments up $2.6 million, with that local sales tax being the largest part of that. That'll be a total of $38 million for those payments, plus the property tax and the other license permits and fees and charges for services. So any other comments on that page 30 as we look through the revenue line items? Noticing that almost all of our permits and fees are down as budgeted. Could you tell me about, at the bottom of the page, the fourth line up, the street department subdivision paving? Could you tell me what that line item is, $428,300 about?
We've got several subdivisions where the developer needed to repave those streets in those subdivisions. Some of them are almost completely built out. So through the city's paving program, we're actually going to resurface those streets. We'll actually put the top course of paving down on those. The developer will then repay the city, and that's where that revenue will be shown.
And this one-time cable franchise fee on page 31 under the miscellaneous revenue is about $1.3 million. Is that just adding the?
That was actually what was located in the cable TV fund previously, and when the general fund, when the cable TV fund was moved into the general fund, that franchise fee now hits the general fund revenue.
And why don't gas franchise tax? Those are just regular payments by the Atmos.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's why they are relatively, well, they're not flat. They're going actually dropping just a little bit.
Mr. Lyons, what's the state income tax allocation where it's gone down?
That's where residents pay the state for their interest and dividend earned. That's the state tax that we have as an income tax, and we get our share based on our residents. And obviously with the economy, dividends and interest have dropped dramatically.
And Melissa, as the mayor said, that's what's commonly referred to as a hall income tax?
Yes.
And those are the state shared revenues, I suppose. When you add all those up, they're near $110, $115 per resident per year. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's that revenue from state government where they share revenue with us.
Well, actually, that particular line is based specifically on our residents.
That on the hall, on the right, I understand.
And then the court fines, is the number we have based upon what we collected or based upon what we have in receivables?
Collected.
Okay. So hopefully we think, I guess where that number is increasing with a third-party vendor that we worked on a couple of months ago, that we hope that will help those outstanding.
They'll actually go back to prior years.
Right.
But hopefully for the coming years, they stay on top of it and stay more current. That hopefully will drive that revenue line item up in the future.
Other questions or comments regarding the general fund revenue line item details?
as we look at the property tax, I'm sure most people realize that the reassessment is conducted every 4 years. It was last completed in 2010, and so our property taxes should be up to date based on the assessments that are provided by the county property tax assessor. And property taxes are approximately 36% of the total general fund revenue. We also receive tax equivalent payments from companies who have received payment in lieu of taxes incentives called pilots, and those revenues have come from a number of businesses that we have locally: General Mills, Embassy Suites, Husky Trust and Building Supply, Rich Products, and Verizon Wireless. And those were made through the county's Industrial Development Board.
Correct.
And I'm not sure why, but the fourth largest source of general fund revenue other than property tax or sales tax is the beer tax. I don't know whether it has anything to do with a major university located here or a lot of drive-through beer sales as people are going on to other counties or communities. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm sure that's it.
That's possibly it. We also have a hotel motel tax, and that revenue is used to fund our part of our Parks and Recreation Department, partially our Chamber of Commerce, our Stones River Greenway, and our other tourism-related organizations. Any other questions or comments regarding the general fund revenue before we go to human resources? If not, then we'll go to human resources at this time, and that's found beginning on page 79 of your proposed budget document. Mr. Godwin, welcome. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Mayor Bragg, members of the council. Proposed budget, of course, is on page 79 through 83. We are very pleased to participate in one of the council's primary priority for the last fiscal year in terms of the strong and sustainable financial and economic health. Mr. Lyons just mentioned a fixed asset reduction in the amount of approximately $400,000. We believe, of course, that there will be a good outcome as well with our employees, even though there is a significant amount of savings. The feedback that we've gotten so far from approximately 14 meetings out of 18 has been positive. There will be some additional questions as we finish those meetings out early this week. We are also able to report that the bid for stop loss or reinsurance is still underway. We'll be delivering the results of that bid on June 9th to Mayor and City Council. But once again, I wanted to mention that that was a remaining item dealing with the financial and economic health mission priority that we had as a department. Also, in terms of accomplishments, related to our goals for 2011, we have completed the revision to the city employment application, which is posted online, and we believe that that update has provided for a much more efficient and effective employment process in terms of the applicant as well as the internal departments. As Mr. Lyons mentioned as well, we have completed the Train the Trainer session for service excellence. We've also launched 2 departmental training sessions with public safety, and we've gotten favorable feedback from those launches. We, of course, do intend to complete the training as soon as is possible. And finally, of note, we did assist several departments in the reductions in force that took place. Even though we had to carry out some of those decisions, we received good feedback when we were able to assist employees with their questions concerning benefits and outplacement. And as a special note, I appreciate the council's consideration with the outplacement funds that were provided for that action. Turning to page 83, I wanted to mention some highlights concerning the proposed budget for next year. And in doing so, I'll mention that Human Resources is now administering the payroll administrative functions for not only general admin, but also for water and sewer. And we've been completing those payroll applications for the last several cycles, thanks to a good team effort between Joe Kirchner and his staff in our department. We have successfully done that, again, in the last 3 or 4 payroll cycles. So that change has resulted in some additional funding that's required and necessary. You'll note in the office equipment line there's an increase for next fiscal year that's based primarily on the need to complete additional programming, and that programming will also include additional tasks in order to be compliant with healthcare reform in 2012 and 2013. The overall operating budget is decreased, mostly as a result of a retiree salary, which will not be included in the new fiscal year. But I will point out there are additional savings related to another departmental priority, and that is online applications, which you approved in terms of the NeoGov proposal here a few weeks ago. So we expect to see an efficiency result in terms of some advertising costs associated with that change. In terms of the budget, the total amount is approximately $760,000, which is about $86,000 less than the last fiscal year. And we do intend to keep a staff size the same at 9. And so with that, I'll try to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Godwin? I guess you're really good. Any questions?
Do we feel like we're taking our customer service budget down considerably? Do we feel like we'll still be able to accomplish what we accomplished this year, but by reducing it so much?
Yes. The budget change really had to do primarily with the program design fees. And so once we have laid the foundation for the program, which we have now, those changes essentially will be the majority of those changes in the proposed budget.
Any other questions or comments? Is the E-Verify implementation in coordination with citywide recruitment and hiring practices, is that what we've been reading a lot about in the newspaper? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Is there a cost associated with that?
There is no cost associated with E-Verify.
Are we currently doing that?
No, sir, we're not currently.
So we'll begin to.
Yes.
All right, any other questions on human resources? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
I notice we have a lot of volunteers from our outside agencies here today, and I know many of them make the high dollars, the big money with the volunteer organizations. I'm being facetious. But with the council's agreement, I see, looking at the request for funding from outside agencies, that we have virtually budgeted for every organization exactly what we gave you last year. And unless there are some additions that we want to make to that list from the council, what I would like to do is leave that list as presented. It's available to all of you. If you have had a copy of the agenda that I believe is made as a part of it, but it's exactly the way you were budgeted last year, except in just a very few. Line Ball Library, for one, that's because of a different agreement. The Rehabilitation Center, just a little bit, and I believe those were the only two with any major changes. So if it's with the council's approval, we'll just leave that and not go through each one of those individually unless you wish to do so.
No motions required?
All right, if that's all right, if anybody wants to bring anything up additional to that, if they would meet with Mr. Lyons specifically and see if you can figure out how to fund any additions to those. Otherwise, it will be as presented, and we appreciate all of you being here, and we know you have other things that you could be doing, and we appreciate it, and you're free to go or free to stay.
Oh, wait, Mayor, they're all leaving. Can we eat the pizza now?
Well, yeah, but that's the pay.
Well, that cleaned them out. Chris, that cleaned them out.
It did. That we did.
Well, they don't have
Quit.
We did,
And one is hotel motel tax, so that's a,
Floor paid, new flooring put down.
give me his name and I'll have him junior call.
they did on
You
that.
got his,
Yep, it's a girl, it's his daughter.
2 years.
Let me get to it.
All right. Thank you, council members. And let us go and look at debt service, which is 154 to 157. Mr. Lyons, any comments regarding debt service?
No, sir, it's pretty straightforward. This year's budget does pick up the most recent TML loan closed by the city. That was about $47 million. You did that last year. So the debt service increase there does show that new issue, but the rest of this is relatively straightforward. Obviously, our debt service fund is paying the long-term debt of the city. City issues debt over a 15-year amortization schedule as opposed to 20 or 30 years used by some communities. That, in the long run, saves the city considerable interest expense. But this fund is actually what takes care of all of our projects, our parks, our new road projects, police and fire facilities, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
It also says that 91% of all principal was repaid within 10 years, generally speaking. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And we still have a bond issue available, is that correct? So if we wanted to refinance these variable rate?
Sure. We went to the market in September of last year, and rates were at historic lows, and the city locked in at a very attractive interest rate. Frankly, it was comparable to what we'd averaged on the variable rate program. Because rates were at historic lows, we brought to you the possibility of refinancing some of our other variable rate debt to try to take advantage and lock in that interest cost. However, as we started to move through that process, the rates started to go up and go up pretty rapidly. And so we put that on hold. Should we want to refinance some of that debt again, we'd have to go back to the state and ask for their approval again. That usually is something that happens as a matter of course, but the approval the state gave us last time, I believe, expired in February or March. But rates are starting to track back down a little bit, but maybe not to the point where we've thought about refinancing again.
So that issue is not available anymore. We'd have to kind of go back through the process again.
We would, and we would want to take a look at what debt we be making a debt service payment this month. So we'd want to revisit maturities and amounts outstanding and what was going on with interest rates. But right now, we still know what's out there, but we're not ready to move forward on that yet.
So as information, we pay our interest payments every month and principal payments.
That's true for the TML loans. For the bond issues, we pay interest twice a year and principal once a year. But for the loans and the notes through TML, we pay interest monthly and principal annually.
Annually.
We're about, in fact, on the list of statements for tonight, we've got about $22 million we'll be sending out next week.
that one we didn't get something.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions regarding the debt service?
Mayor, I'd like to make one correction. I didn't catch it. I thought we had already fixed it, but I'm sure it's my fault that I didn't get it to Aaron in time. On page 154, when you mentioned the 91%, that's actually how much of our current debt will be paid off in 10 years. But our normal, because we pay off in 15 years, I think Mr. Crumley figured last year around 67%. 67%.
So two-thirds is paid off in two-thirds of the term.
That's correct.
Right. But if you took where we are currently, 91% would be paid off in the next 10 years.
Okay, so you'll make that correction.
Yes, sir.
And that's not in the budget, it's just in the comments section.
Yes, sir, it's just narrative.
I mentioned one other thing, Mayor. The expenditure budget here, because about half our debt is variable rate debt, we've got to come up with an estimate about what's going on with interest rates. We've budgeted here at 2.5%. That's consistent with what we're currently using. I think that's going to be more than enough, but we never know. And that's certainly one of there's benefits to the variable rate program, and we've certainly enjoyed those. But certainly there is always the possibility that interest rates could spike. Hadn't happened over a prolonged period of time in the number of years that we've been in this program, but did certainly want to make you aware. We try to take an estimate that was conservative, but it is just that, it's an estimate.
So that's a blended 2.5%. That's
Yes, sir.
taken into account variable and fixed rate.
With the fixed rate, we actually budgeted because we know what that number is going to be. There's predictability. We know exactly what it's going to be. That's plugged in just as it
As is, all right.
As is. It is the variable rate piece that we've got to make an estimate, and at 2.5%, I feel like based on what we've seen recently, that should be just fine. But there could be an unforeseen event in the future that could cause that number to spike, and we may need to come back to you. Hadn't happened yet, but certainly want to let you know that certainly is a possibility, likely as it is.
Any other questions regarding the debt service? If not, we'll go to the Parks and Recreation Fund. Mr. Goodwin, welcome.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, I think it's still afternoon. Good afternoon. It is an honor and a privilege to present this year's annual City of Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation budget. Over the past year, our department has experienced an increase in the number of citizens using our programs, which has resulted in an increase in revenue. While the economy's been down, our revenues for the last year and this coming year are projected to grow by over $250,000, and the number of user visits has increased to record numbers. For example, the user visits at SportsCom in Patterson were over 390,000. As a part of our community outreach, we partnered with 94 different individual organizations last year. Between the work of our staff and the efforts of our partners, we offered over 250 programs and served 174,000 participants. These numbers do not include the numerous athletes and athletic leagues, and which has 11,700 players and coaches. And as we well know, in addition to those 11,700 players and coaches, there's tens of thousands of parents and spectators that visit our park throughout the year during our baseball, softball, soccer, football, and tennis season. And the athletic tournaments that we host bring another estimated 25,000 visitors to our parks in our city. Last year, we had 1,003 shelter rentals, and it's estimated that the number of users for our shelters was over 50,000. These numbers alone represent about 750,000 user visits to our parks and facilities per year, and these numbers do not include the thousands of people that use our open space in our parks, our playgrounds, and our greenways, which are could equate to at least 1 million, if not more, user visits per year for our parks and facilities. Our goals for 2011-2012 are listed in the budget document, and our major accomplishments for 2011-2012 is also listed. Of course, one of the major accomplishments in our 2010 was the opening, as Mr. Lyons said, of our new outdoor pool at SportsCom, which resulted in a 79% increase in our participation and 129% increase in our revenues. We have completed Phase 3 of the Stones River Greenway, which adds another mile to our Greenway system. We hosted our first national soccer tournament, which was the National President's Cup, and we'll be hosting the Region 3 Division 1 soccer tournament next month, and that will bring 184 teams to our city with an economic impact of approximately $8 million. We think it's important to mention that we also provide financial assistance to our city residents to ensure everyone has an opportunity to participate, and last year we gave out $361,800 in financial assistance. For this year's budget, we plan to continue to meet the goals set by the City Council. Our activities, programs, and special events and facilities will continue to build safe and livable neighborhoods. Our commitment to the development of parks and greenways while promoting and hosting local, state, regional, and national events will build strong and sustainable financial economic health for our community. And as always, we will strive to provide excellent customer service and seek the input of our residents to ensure our programs are meeting their needs. We also will continue to engage our citizens in our planning process so that they have a voice in our future growth of our department. This year, we plan to continue the expansion of our Greenway by purchasing the land for Phase 4, which will get us to Barfield Crescent Park. This is the single largest expenditure shown in our budget. This is shown in our budget for accounting purposes, and the amount shown, $2,247,274, represents 80% of the federal funding for this project. Of course, the construction is planned for the 2012-2013 budget. In addition to the Greenway being shown in the budget for accounting purposes, there are 4 other state grants that are shown in the amount of $195,000. These grants will be used for the needed improvements on our existing Greenway, renovation of Kids Castle, and working with the city schools and community on improving the overall health of our children and our citizens. And of course, Mr. Lyons mentioned several of the other projects that we will be undertaking this year. And Mayor, with that, I will stop and answer any questions you may have about the Parks and Recreation budget.
In addition, I'd like to say this weekend I attended a Kidney Foundation walk at the island out at our Gateway area. It was a tremendous event, and anyone who really wants a great place to have a walk and to have a number of people come and be very comfortable and very pleasantly surprised with a great outdoor area, our Gateway Island Park is really fabulous.
Thank you, sir.
I'd recommend that.
It's very well demanded, and of course, if you want it, you need to call because reservations go very quickly.
I understand, and I don't get bumped in front of anybody either. I have to take my place. I understand that. Any questions or comments regarding the Parks and Recreation Fund? Mr. Goodman?
Just a comment, Mayor. I just want to thank Lanny and his staff because it doesn't seem like, but it's been 5 years ago now that Miles and Melinda asked me who to contact about the middle half.
That's exactly
and
right.
We're getting ready to have the 5th one in October, and my understanding is it's sold out in less than 2 weeks this time.
11 days this year, 2,500 folks.
Mm-hmm. And that number's
in the first year, you know, we thought we'd set a record by selling out 34 days, and that was 1,000 folks. And this year we set it at 2,500. 11 days later, we're sold out.
I think that's just a testament to just overall how well Parks and Rec does with what we ask of them.
Excellent. I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, you're cut out again this year. That's bad.
You know, I bet, Lenny, you could make an exception for the vice mayor.
We may be able to squeeze him in.
You won't be able to squeeze him in, no. Mr. Young, do you have a question?
I just wanted to ask, where are we on the tree removal from the Cason Lane trailhead down to the river? Of the bridge?
I think they're about 50%, somewhere around, finished with that project. Of course, they got caught right in the middle of the rain and the flood and so forth, so they're back at it now, and I would say probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks they should be finished.
Chopping it to bits.
Hopefully, if we don't get other rains.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Other questions, comments regarding Parks and Recreation?
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes, sir.
When are, so the public knows, when will the sports-com pool be opening up? Or the
SportsCom Pool will open the Saturday before Memorial Day, which I think is May 28th. And we'll open at 10 o'clock that morning, and we will be open on Memorial Day.
So that is the Saturday, the weekend of Memorial Day.
The weekend of Memorial Day, the Saturday of that weekend.
All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Any other questions before I let him go? And we'll go to the Senior Citizen Center Fund.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Ms. Burt, welcome.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Mayor and Council. It's good to be here again, and thank you for the opportunity to present our budget and our ideals and goals for our senior center. I do want to make a few comments about the senior center. We are a level 4 senior center as established by the Aging Commission in Tennessee. And as such, we are considered a multi-purpose senior center where we offer the community, the families, provisions for a broad spectrum of social, nutritional, educational, and recreational opportunities for older individuals. These are age 60 and over. As a multipurpose center, they are very vital to the neighborhood's aging in place and intergenerational strengthening of the family system. They're a good investment as a senior center offers life-enriching programming, civic engagement, and employment opportunities, and connect older adults to vital community services that can help them to stay healthy and independent. The Senior Center, St. Clair Street Senior Center, is a multipurpose center that meets the needs of seniors' minds, body, and spirit through educational programs, health and wellness, classes, and socialization. The strength of the community are the senior citizens who are the stabilizing force bringing together the community as a whole with values, ethics, and patriotism. And I just want to highlight some of the give some of the highlights for this year. We're 30 years old. We had our 30th anniversary, which we're proud of. That's very great at sustaining the senior center in the community. We established a community garden through a partnership with the community care nursing home. We were able to have a large plot out there. We have a master gardener has volunteered his time, and this sprung off from a healthy eating, healthy living class that we have. They wanted to talk about nutrition, so they got the seniors involved in working the garden. Everybody had a job to do. They were able to harvest it and did very well with it. Some were able to put away canned foods and things like that to sustain them even through the winter. We have a senior wellness expo. We changed that from our health fair to more of a positive look at what we can do to maintain that wellness, and the whole idea is about wellness prevention. And we have what we call the Identity Theft Buster. We actually have a big blue Max Shred that we have, the seniors are able to bring their material that are identity sensitive, that they can bring them there and shred them, and once they're gone, they're gone. We tell them be cautious, what they're putting in there, but they're able to do that, and we're glad that we're able to help them with that. We've started a grief and loss support group, which has been very vital for those that have suffered grief and loss during the year. It's met very many needs. We have a new format for our newsletter. I think many of you have already received that, and we're really proud of that because it enables us to give a lot more information to our seniors about the different programs and activities that are going on. We've added a nurse assistant this year to our program, which has been very helpful with our Nurse on Duty program, which is an award-winning program, and having a nurse on duty at the senior center. But she was getting overloaded with people that are needing the care, and especially as the health care and medical becomes more critical, they need to have this opportunity to see the nurse, and adding the nurse assistant has been very helpful to her in allotting the time that's necessary for seeing the seniors. We have a lot of things going on at the senior center. Our volunteer program is excellent. We have over 500 volunteers this year that have served, and they put in over 11,000 hours of service. When you look at that, that's tremendous, but we depend on our volunteers to help us in a lot of areas that we're not able to. Our staff is stretched to the max with what they're needing to do. So these volunteers step in and help so many times, and it's very vital to us. I do want to go over a few highlights in the budget that I might want to bring to your attention. One is the addition of the $120,000, and that is for a new bus, but we are able to apply for a grant for that, and that's why we did include that in there, because we do have a grant, and we're looking to get a much larger bus, because with every one of our activities, when we do our trips, we have at least another bus load that's on a waiting list. So we felt like that this would be a good time that we could put in for a grant, and the grant opportunity was to us to put in for a larger bus, and I think it'll be a great need there. And as the building is aging, we're needing more into our building maintenance, and you'll see quite a large jump in that. About $10,000, I think, for this year, because we're finding so many things now are needing some attention maintenance-wise, so we feel like that is a good boost for that. Other than that, pretty much what has been indicated is just normal increases that we've experienced this year, and will continue probably to experience in the way of utilities and things like that, office supplies and all that go along with that. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer any of those.
Any questions for Ms. Burt? I notice your unduplicated participants total has kind of fallen. Is that something that you can track, and you know why?
Well, I think it's because of the tracking system that we do have now, that I think we're able to track more clearly those that actually participate. And also we're pulling out of the system those that had been in there and really were not active participants anymore. So we're kind of adjusting those.
That's the card system, the check-in?
Yeah, the scan card system. Wonderful.
Anything else from Ms. Burt? We love our senior center. We love our seniors.
You're welcome anytime.
Those of us who are seniors really love us.
Thank you.
So we appreciate what you do, and we look forward to this accreditation. I know all of us are familiar with accreditation programs, and I know that you'll be able to do that. We're real proud of that.
Yes, we're excited about being involved in that program.
Great.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks very much. All right, let's go to our golf course fund. Mr. Wilkins, our director of golf, is here.
Mayor Bragg, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to present the public golf course budget to you this evening. Golf course department is made up of two facilities currently, Old Fort Golf Club and the Veterans Golf Course. And just like a lot of other things, the economy has affected golf like everything else, and caused a considerable reevaluation of both those facilities. First off, Old Fort was celebrated its 25th anniversary this past year. And we had good participation in that event, and appreciate all the ones that were able to attend. Also, Old Fort is the golf department is experiencing its first retiree this year, so that just shows kind of how time is passing. For our livable neighborhoods, it's our interest to try to provide quality recreation facilities for all interested residents. We feel like we're able to do that. Strong and sustainable economic health. One of the programs that we were able to implement this year was our loyalty program, now called our frequent player program, to try to enhance the participation at the golf course. And as of today, just from last year and up to this point this year, we're pushing 1,400 customers just in that one program that take advantage of that. So that's very pleasing. We were able to expand rounds this past year. We're still not up to where we were in 08, but we were able to grow rounds at Old Fort by upwards of 1,500 rounds. We're looking to keep pushing that along. As far as our customer service goes, through the loyalty program that I told you about, we're getting good participation there. Also, with the discounts and things that are there, purchases are picking up. We've seen a growth in that area also, and looking forward also to participating in the new city customer training program that'll help us all out when that happens. Some of the accomplishments there, and like I said, we were able to increase rounds a little bit at Old Fort. Feel like the value of the experience and the quality of the product met our goals. Also, all the local high schools were able to participate this year through their golf programs, whether it be through practice or matches or events. Also, this year will be our 25th consecutive year to host the United States Golf Association Junior National Qualifier for the state of Tennessee. So we're proud of that. Also, some of our goals for the year also continue to increase rounds, also to increase any new programs that we're able to grow the game. One of the things that we have done due to the reevaluating of all the golf courses, you know the information about the recommendation is coming to you to cease operation of the VA golf course come September 1 due to lack of success of being able to negotiate a long-term contract. We've been at that for many years, and also the participation level there has dropped over 10% just within the last year. As far as engaging our community, one of the things in closing that facility at the VA, both of the full-time employees are going to be retained, hopefully at Old Fort. One will replace the retired position that is open. The other one will hopefully help us to go into our next phase of engaging the community, and that's working hopefully to be able to get into the city and county schools to implement some programs that we've been wanting to try to do there. Also to work closer with the recreation department as far as maybe getting into expertise more in the golf part with maybe at Sportscom and Patterson Park, and also with some of our local community right down the street with Franklin Heights. We're working with them right now to try to set up some programs there. So with that said, I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you may have about the golf.
Most people know that Tracy wears a tie one time a year as he comes to these budget meetings, so it's nice to see how nice you look in a tie.
I appreciate that.
Although I see you on the golf course a lot, and you look terrific out there, except when you're trying to teach me how to play golf, and that doesn't work. So.
I started at 2 o'clock on this, and I made the 4 o'clock appointment. So
all right. Very good.
Mayor, I have a...
Yes, Mr. Young.
Mr. Lyons, Tracy touched on this, but we've been negotiating with the VA for 20 years to work out some long-term agreement that we could make some improvements on that, and I don't know if the general public realizes how hard we've worked to no avail on that.
Sure. I'm glad you give me the opportunity to speak to that, because I was going to try to jump in and speak to that as well. We know many in our community have enjoyed golf at the VA golf course. I've been out there. I've taken my boys out there to play golf, and it certainly has been a golf course a lot of folks have enjoyed. But just so that everybody understands and we don't make any assumptions, That land is not owned by the city of Murfreesboro, never has. It's always been owned by the VA. And so the city has been out there through a lease. And Mr. Wilkins, Mr. Crumley, and I spoke today. It's actually been 24 years, I think, we have tried to work out a long-term arrangement with the VA golf course. We've covered this ground a little bit, but we have tried over and over to try to work out a long-term arrangement. We've gotten close on several occasions, but we've never been able to finalize the negotiations. About 3 to 4 years ago, we did get reasonably close to, I think, trying to work out a long-term arrangement, but the city and the VA were, although we were agreeable on many of the deal points, the issue of value and compensation, there was a very wide gulf between the city and the VA in terms of what that land was worth. A proposal was put forward to the VA that would have included not only golf, but an additional 80 acres for a recreation complex. At that point in time, the plan that was drawn up would have included a number of baseball fields. But that project got put on the shelf when the city and the VA could not agree on value. So it sat there for some period of time. When we picked it back up to try to see, did it make sense to try to see if a project could happen there, I think we realized we'd been at this for 20-plus years. It hadn't happened yet. And while the local VA leadership could certainly see the benefit, they saw their patients and others in the community enjoy that golf course. Washington had other priorities, and we understand that. But it just hadn't happened yet. And as I began to step back and look at it and realizing we were going to be hunting for land in western Murfreesboro for a park, started to think, does it make sense to try to reach the need of golfers that are looking for that style of play, perhaps at a different location in dirt that the city owned. And so we started to think about moving in that direction. We know play has fallen off at golf courses all across the country. It's fallen off at the VA. And so maybe instead of trying to chase a project at a location where we weren't the landowner, maybe it makes sense to try to fit that need in our city at another day at another location. Now, I will tell you, the VA called us today. They said, the secretary has signed off on a concept. But that still means the details of a deal would still need to get worked out. We'd have to go through the federal process, and I could not tell you with a straight face how long that might take. I don't know if it could ever get done. I would suggest to you that the idea of putting additional baseball fields in, the north part of our city probably isn't the best place to do that. We've got other parts of our city that don't have baseball and softball facilities nearby. And I don't know that it would be fair to the rest of the neighborhoods and the residents to put more baseball in a place where we've already got Sportscom, where we've already got the fields at Starplex, and that we probably need to distribute where that play happens. That feels like the right thing to do. So the idea of doing something bigger at the VA property with baseball doesn't seem like a good fit. The idea of trying to develop a golf course there with the VA, I'm not sure we can get that done. And maybe it's time to cut bait and try to find another location for a golf teaching facility. It's not in this year's budget. It's not likely to be in next year's budget. But we're getting ready to update the capital improvement plan, and perhaps that's a chance to take a look at that. As we look for land in western Murfreesboro for a park, maybe we look to set aside some acreage for this at the point in time where we feel like we're ready to tackle that. So we know it's something our community has enjoyed for a long time. This recommendation decision doesn't come to you very easily, but I know the Golf Commission has certainly tried hard. I don't think anybody could fault the city for not giving it a real hard effort and a very long, determined attempt to see something happen. But perhaps maybe it's time for us to find another location where we could develop it on land that's owned by the city.
Do you know why the rounds are down the play at the VA? Do you have any idea why you're down that much, so to speak?
Well, I just have my thoughts. I mean, the way the economy has been, the golf course is the same as it's always been. I mean, in fact, it may even be a little better shape than it's been because of the grass that we've been able to grow over the last few years. But I'd say the economy maybe affects that group of players as much or more than anyone. And I know some of the suggestions were, well, maybe a price increase or something along that nature, but we had a price increase just a little over a year ago of just $1, and we saw a continual decrease there also. And part of the issue, too, is with golf kind of in the way that it is now, there's across the country, and Murfreesboro is no different, there's a lot of facilities out there, and there's a lot of them that are struggling a little bit, and there's been where we've tried to attack the issue with our frequent player and loyalty, where people are playing and you reward them for that. A lot of them are just discounting their product to a point that it can get to where it may seem like a better value than what it would be to play at the VA and what's offered there.
I think one of the other contributing factors has been when 20 years ago when the VA golf course was here, Old Fort, Indian Hills, but today we've got a number of other courses that have opened up. That has given players other choices to look to play golf. I think as golf began to build more and more courses and golfers had more choice, now that play is down due to the economy, everybody has suffered. So we find ourselves today with the VA where golfers do have other choices for golf that may be a similar experience, not the same, but somewhat similar, and that certainly has detracted from some of our numbers.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, I just had a few questions. One would, and maybe Mr. Lyons or Mr. Wilkins can answer this. I had some calls, and one of the questions was, is it possible for us to keep that VA course open until we find another course somewhere somewhere in the city, whether it be the western side or wherever? That was question one. And two, I know that VA course serves a lot of our seniors and a lot of our children, a lot of our kids and young players and things like that. What are we doing maybe at Old Fort that maybe would absorb that or accommodate that segment of the community that may be playing? And number three, do we, and I know you may not can answer this question, but are we aware or do we know if the VA will, after we move out of that, will they continue to have that open and available to the public for those maybe they want to continue to play? Yeah,
right. But maybe the last question first. I don't know what the VA's long-term plans are. As I mentioned to you, they did call us at 1:30 today. Asked if we were still interested and explained it would be back through that whole same federal process. So I don't know what the VA's intentions on that piece of property would be. Again, the cities would need to give, I think it's a 60-day notice or 90-day notice. 90-day notice. We'd have to give a 90-day notice that we were going to cease operations there. So I'm not sure what they would do after that. I know Mr. Wilkins may want to speak to some of the ideas he's had at Old Fort to try to pick up some of the play and maybe offer some new opportunities.
Yes, I would. One of the things, if you go all the way back to when the city took over the VA and it was just a short-term lease so that we would be able to hopefully get the long-term lease to be able to go in and invest in what we were wanting to try to do at that time. And that was offer something that we could help to maybe grow the game and an alternative to a championship course that we already offered. And one of those would be through clinics and being able to teach the game to not only juniors or seniors or just adults that were wanting to take up the game. And quite honestly, the area that's available out there there's just nowhere to be able to do that. I mean, you're hitting balls right along Highway 231 and back and forth at your own parking lot and the entrance road coming in. So it's pretty tough. So the ability to be able to do that is just not there. So one of the things that we will do by bringing the employee that's over there now, and we're going to implement it before the closure of this course or the cease operation there, is try to use him in a way to bring all those clinics and teaching opportunities to Old Fort, and also where I mentioned earlier about being able to start some different programs that will allow us maybe to go into some of the schools and some of the different local neighborhoods close to the golf course and around, even trying to get in maybe at Patterson Park also, and Sportscom, and then some of the schools to be able to try to push these programs forward. I mean, it's obvious, I think, by the length of time that the city has put in trying to negotiate at this facility that is originally where we would want to be able to do that. But I think it's quite obvious that we're not going to be able to do that. And it's a hope and dream of mine that we are able to do that for everyone that's interested. And you just have to have a place to be able to do that, not only a place to practice and hit balls on a range and a place to learn on, but also just a place to be able to teach them how to do it. And that's how, hopefully, how we'll be able to use that person at Old Fort in a way that we hadn't been able to because of personnel.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Young?
Tracy, the mayor represents us very well in so many different ways, but I do worry about his golf game. Is he a hindrance to the community with his golf game?
Oh, that was cold.
The mayor is definitely the mayor is one of the reasons that our rounds are up a little over the last year or so. But no, he frequents our place occasionally.
Loyalty.
Yeah.
That's right. Mr. McFarland.
No additional injuries this year. No.
Mayor, I've served on the golf commission since my time on council, so almost 6 years. And I know right before, it was legendary on how much the city had worked with the VA when I came onto the golf commission. And so one of Mr. Haley's priorities before he left, it was sort of a running joke with him that he wanted to get this taken care of before he left office, or before he left being the city manager. So we even I remember sitting in a meeting with the golf commission that he had the VA on the phone, and we have a concept plan for that property out there that showed ball fields along 231. It even showed an access to the Stones River, and the city manager was working back and forth with Congressman Gordon to try to find something to do, to get this done. And I think that everything happens for a reason, and I think there's a reason that this didn't get worked out. And one of the things I look at is, we have in our CIP plan looking for park opportunities on the west side of town. And I think the more that you look at it and the more that we discussed on what we were going to do on that property, I think something just didn't feel right, that we do have McKnight Park, we have Sportscom, we have the Siegel Soccer Complex, and we have all of that on the north side of town. We've got different opportunities with Barfield Crescent Park. We've got all different things spread throughout the city, but not really anything on the west side of town. So I think there's a reason why it didn't happen. And does it feel good closing the VA down? I'd say no. But do we have any land that we own for Parks and Recreation that the city leases to do? So that's the thing that we kept going back and forth with the Golf Commission, that no one wanted to shut it down, but we also were getting ready to have to spend significant amounts of money for mower replacements and capital outlay on the course, and we kept looking to say, how can we do that on the course in land that we don't even own? So I think it's something that I wish that we could find a different thing to do, but we really have tried, and now we have to find another place to do something different and move forward. So, and that's not a decision that I don't think the Golf Commission came about lightly. I mean, even at our last meeting, I think we had, I wouldn't say heated debates, but I think we were spirited on talking about different things that we were wanting to do with the different facilities, and it still came to that same conclusion.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? If not, thank you, Mr. Wilkins, and I know you'll keep trying with me. I know you will. Please.
Another problem.
Solid Waste Fund. Mr. Smith, welcome. Any comments before we go through the Solid Waste Fund?
Oh, my comment.
Your comment.
Well, we started last year in a storm, and we're ending this year in a storm. So I'm glad to be able to say that this is the new budget year. Okay. Are there any questions? If not, thank you.
Best report.
He's got stuff to pick up.
He needs to go.
Well, in answer to that, we have so far since April the 27th, when we had the windstorm, our straight line winds, we have picked up, along with the street department, water and sewer, we've picked up a little over 9,579,120 pounds. Or, if you would like, in what I look at it in tonnage, 4,789.56 tons.
So we're going to have mulch for a few more months.
Well, yes, sir. We've got a good amount going out there, but just to put that in perspective, in the Good Friday tornado, we picked up 8,000, had 8,000 tons brought into our facility, so we've already picked up a little bit over half of what we got in the Good Friday tornado. And my projection is we will probably exceed the Good Friday tornado when it's all said and done.
All right. I notice you're doing with less.
Yes,
and
sir.
Tell us what the feedback has been through your phone system and the comments of our customers for you during this past year as you have changed your shifts and kind of picked up.
It has been, as far as the garbage service, it's always Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The brush pickup, up till recently, it had been very good, but I can honestly tell you that we have sort of been fried here the last, and the ladies at the office, they have done a very good job. I could not thank any more of Miss Todd and Miss Robinson because of the job that they do, trying to keep a good grin on the face, because I just tell them it's just like the old Chinese proverb, you got to develop skin 7 thumbs deep, because it's amazing. But grass is very important, and we're just picking up as fast as we can. They cut it down, and we've and I told them, I told the ladies, I said, in the storm that we had in 2009, it was very concentrated. This one here, after 55 square miles, it hit 45 of the city of Murfreesboro, because I don't think, we've gone from County Farm Road to Plantation South, which is on the 231, 96 end, all the way up through Hawks Ridge, out to, all the way up to Liberty Station and out on out 231 North. So it's been a pretty widespread event. And, the 4 hours, the 4 days, 10 hours a day, it's really worked well. The guys, the employees have really embraced that. It gives us a chance to be out there for 10 straight hours picking up limbs and brush. And we've made a big dent in that. And yes, sir, when we get a chance to start turning this and we get to give our regrind away next year, we will have some pretty good material again when we start doing that out in March again this year. As far as some of the other accomplishments that we did last year, we still keep a 25% reduction going into the Subtitle D landfill, which is right out to Middle Point. With the material that we brought in, we did a little over 28,000 tons of yard waste last year. We're going to exceed that goal this year. We picked up a little bit, 33,000 tons of household garbage throughout the city. This year we have actually seen a little bit of an uptick in the first quarter for the first time in 2 years in the number of about the amount of tonnage that we have picked up, which means that people are spending a little bit more. We can tell when the economy starts looking better by the amount of garbage that gets produced. So those things right there. As far as our routes are concerned, we're picking up on our automated side loaders a little over 1,000 homes per route.
Other questions, comments? Let me ask about these outside government agency fuel sales, the outside government fuel setup, intergovernmental fuel sales, and school and utility fuel sales. What have we got there? What's going on there? Those additions on page 192.
Sure. Maybe speak to that, Mayor. We were approached a short while ago by Mayor Burgess, looking to see if we would be interested in assisting them in fuel purchase. Finance, solid waste, city manager's office sat down, and we will be bringing you a formal recommendation about this. But we want to try to help out Rutherford County. The city invested in our Florence Road and Main Street areas where we've got fueling depots. So what we will do is now provide fuel to the Rutherford County. and they will reimburse the city for the cost of that fuel and a small charge for the administrative piece of this. So we think it'll be helpful to Rutherford County. We certainly don't mind giving them some assistance there. So that revenue line item will show up both for their fuel sales as well as the admin fee.
And where's the expense part of it?
It will show up.
Page 193.
It shows up on the second page.
The purchases for resale, $2.9 million.
2.9, all right, thank you.
Our vehicle and machinery fleet is up almost a couple $100,000. What's that number?
As far as the maintenance,
Yes.
the maintenance on the solid waste fleet now is 9 years old. You'll notice in our CIP that we have 2 new garbage trucks, automated side loaders, to start replacing some of the older equipment. And the cost, too, as everybody knows, if you look out at the thing, the fuel prices go up. All of our steel and all of our vendors, as far as tires and everything else, have already increased almost a 10% to a 15% increase in steel prices. And unfortunately, they do not, garbage trucks are basically all steel. So, and I can honestly say that most of that's just because of the Fleet Services Department going up on their prices. So, but it is. It really is. It's the cost of the manufacturing part of the steel.
Mayor, if I could go back to the fuel, this might be as good a time as any to speak to the city's fuel expense. All of us who go to the pump and have to get gas realize fuel prices have climbed tremendously. You're going to speak to Mr. Hyatt's budget here shortly, but you authorized the purchase of a new software program for him. That new software program has really given us some excellent information, so we've tried to step back and look at the miles driven by all our city departments and take a very methodical approach to how we're going to try to budget for fuel. So we think our fuel expense in the upcoming year, I think, is around $600,000 more than it was last year. I hope that's enough. We typically have seen the fuel go up and then it'll start to come back down. I think it's tracked down just a little bit. But I know citywide, that number you will see rippled through the budget. It's managed out of Mr. Smith's department. The fuel line item shows up in the department where the vehicle resides. But we have tried to take a very comprehensive approach to see what's going on with fuel and did budget for quite a big jump in it. But gas is a whole lot more expensive today than it was a year ago.
The Vice Mayor is very bashful, but he wanted to ask about Hogzilla. How's Hogzilla doing?
Hogzilla is doing exactly what it's designed to do. We've gotten some, and in fact, I've had a couple of folks ask how big and all that since the storm. As long as it's not over 13 feet 6 inches in diameter, it will eat it if we can pick it up to put it in there. And it is actually it has been worth its weight in gold. And Hogzilla now is almost 7 years old in itself, and it's a little over 500. Probably the estimated replacement cost of that would be closer to $750,000 to $850,000 because we bought it at a little over $550,000 when we did.
What's the lifespan?
The lifespan on that's about 10 years.
How much?
About 10 years.
10. So we got in 3 years.
Got 3 more years, and it really has. And the operators and
3 years for one more.
They go through and they do a good job as far as trying to keep it. They check that as their baby, and it's a little piglet to them. So they're out there every morning at about 6 o'clock, and they get it and they dust it and they wash it down each evening. So they really do a very fine job.
We still have the other smaller one too.
Yes, sir. The Mobart Wood Hog. It's
How far does this go?
well, you have good names for all of our equipment. That's the good thing.
Are they all swine too?
You'd think they'd call them something like a woodchuck or a beaver or something, but they don't. The bigger ones, they call them hoggers or mobark brush hogs and stuff like that. So I did not name them. I would call
The
them.
wood hog is doing all right also?
Yes, good. Yes, sir.
Do you run it at all?
Not much. The reason being is that the way that it was designed, it was, it's a 1996. It was designed basically more for smaller diameter, long lengths, less than 8 inches. And right now, in the storm, we've picked up quite a few big trees this year. So.
You mentioned water and sewer and street departments.
Yes, sir.
Those other departments are continuing to work with you?
Water and sewer, street department still is. Water and sewer had to go back, Terry, but Joe and them worked with us for almost a week and a half, and they did a yeoman's job, and we would not be this far along if it hadn't been for them. And street department still got grass to cut and get ready for our TML conference, and so. But they got one crew helping us still, and hopefully we'll be moving around.
All right.
Mayor, the crews have worked awful hard. We did bring in multiple departments to help with the removal from the storm. I know there are some residents in some areas where the neighborhood perhaps wasn't hit as hard from the storm, and we haven't got there yet. We're going to get there, but we're on a little slower pickup schedule due to the volume of the work, so we certainly ask for everybody's patience. We're going to get there, but it's quite a job we've had ahead of us. We could not say they've done a great job. Awful proud of them.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments on solid waste before we go to the airport fund? If not, thank you, Mr. Smith, for doing more with less.
He's down 19 employees since 3 years ago.
Mr. Girk, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you for allowing this opportunity for me to discuss the airport budget with you. As we look at the highlights of safe and livable neighborhoods, safety is definitely a very important part of our operations at the airport as we work with the university, our various businesses, and our tenants to maintain safe operations at the airport at all times. Much of our year, the last couple of years, has been spent a great deal on future plans to improve our facilities and safety at the airport as we've worked on the airport layout plan and such things as the Unicom radio frequency changes. The strong and sustainable financial and economic health and excellent service really at the airport goes hand in hand, and we have always demonstrated that each year with our front door awards as we continue to try to be a good representative of the city to the various businesses that come in and out of our airport each day, and also with our customers to make sure that they are receiving excellent service. And we have really seen a great improvement in our hangar occupancy this year. As we, the Airport Commission, came to you several years ago looking at the additions of several new hangars and a plan where we would be filling those hangars in a short period of time. And today I have about 3 hangars that I can to lease to people. So we are really filling those quite quickly. That has been, as the economy goes, though, it's been an up and down thing each month. Engaging our community, just as the university is an important part of our community, it's an important part of our operations at the airport. We continue to work with them. I hope that you had the opportunity to look at some of the investments that they've made this year in the air traffic control simulator. Each one of those students does get 5 hours of flight time out at our airport. So even though they might be behind the screen of an air traffic control screen, most of the time they do get experience out at our airport and is a part of their educational program. We've had a number of hundreds and hundreds of kids that we give tours to each year, and which is an amazing thing. Something that a mother brought to my attention was that growing up, we used to, if you ever flew across country, you could get into the cockpit and the pilot would give you little wings. Today, that doesn't happen anymore. So the 727 is a part of our tour, and we let the kids get inside and sit where the pilots sit, and that's a big thrill for a lot of kids. With our airport layout plan, we have been spending a great deal of time with our neighbors, especially the neighbors of the south in the Carriage Park, Harold Lane, Lexington Trace. By the end of the year, we'll have meetings with those neighborhoods talking about the airport layout plan and getting specific information to them. Our accomplishments is we were able to complete the work on the ALP, the airport layout plan, and submit that to the Tennessee Division of Aeronautics for their review, and then supplement as they go to the FAA for coordination. We also began the environmental study on the runway extension. This year, coming into 2012, we hope to complete that environmental assessment for the runway extension, get that information back from the, hopefully from the FAA, and also bring the airport layout plan back to you and the Planning Commission for adoption. We will be positioning ourselves for funding for the designs and future construction. A big part of our budget, as you look at it, will be, as far as the capital improvements, is the work on design work for the asphalt resurfacing of the runway and the major portions of the ramp. Also, we are, our airport commission has been very consistent and steady on our growth and how we've handled all our rents, leases, and our fuel sales. Even though we have been very consistent with it this year with changes to the economy, we have made changes to our rates and how payment plans and things like that to help adjust to increase sales, to keep our position in the airport market based on the various airports around us. Really, if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them at this time.
Any questions from Mr. Gerke regarding the airport?
Mayor, just a couple of comments or compliments that I would like to make to Chad. And with the potential of the expansion of the runway, I want to tell you that a number of folks have contacted me that said they've spoken to you, you've met with them, and they have been very complimentary of just how customer service oriented and user friendly you are to deal with. And second, I'm glad you brought up the issue or about the tours and the things like that. I didn't realize that you all did that until my kindergartner was having a friend of his from school was having his birthday party and had it at the airport this year, and so I got to go through the 727. It was, I think I enjoyed it just as much as all the 5- and 6-year-olds did. So.
That's great, and that's a great opportunity there at the airport, and we enjoy doing it, and we get some really interesting questions during those tours too.
All right. Anything else from Mr. Gerke? We realize the airport's the front door for our community. We look forward to all of the plans for the future, and we appreciate what you do, your extensive staff.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, Mayor,
yes.
I know we didn't, Mr. Gerke hosted us, I guess, a couple of months ago for a joint planning commission and council meeting, and everyone out there did a fantastic job. I mean, to turn a hangar into a meeting spot, and he did a great job.
Thank you.
You're not learning to fly, are you?
No. Thanks. All right. Capital Improvement Fund.
I'll do it from here if you don't mind.
All right, Mr. Crumley.
I'll focus you to page 206. You can see that the Capital Improvement Fund has shrunken mightily from a budget last year of $9 million to a budget this year of almost $1.3 million. That reflects the economy. That reflects the number of projects that we're involved with. The vast majority of this number is the proposed improvements on Middle Tennessee Boulevard between Main Street and Greenland. There is just a small little tail piece in there that is the addition of an entranceway at the NHK plant off of Joe B. Jackson Parkway. But those are the only two projects foreseen in this at this current point in time.
All right. Any questions regarding the Capital Improvement Fund as it is presented? If not, Community Development. Mr. Callow.
You may recall that I brought our
action plan for the coming year to you about 2 weeks ago. And so this is the budget that supports that action plan. Talk a little bit, just a few minutes about what we've done this year. We have either completed or will complete no later than June 30th 15 housing rehab projects, including 2 reconstructions, 8 rehabs, 3 emergency repairs, and 2 tree removal projects. We also have 1 reconstruction that is under contract now, but won't be complete before June 30th. It'll go into the next year. We have 2 reconstructions that we expect to have under contract within the next 6 weeks that'll go into the next fiscal year, and 1 rehab that we expect to have under contract within the next 6 weeks. So we've had an amazing year in housing rehab. We've had some disappointments in housing, affordable housing assistance. Up until about 6 weeks ago, we had only done 1 deal in the first 9 months. Since then, Ms. Pope has closed a total of 6. So the housing market is starting to come back. We've closed 2 microenterprise loans. We have another one that's been approved but not closed, and then we have 3 loans that are out under review that may or may not get closed before June 30th. We currently have 13 agencies receiving public service grants ranging from $3,300 to $16,224, and at least the minimum we've counted is about 2,000 low and very low income residents of Murfreesboro who've received assistance through our public service grants. You'll also recall that we've put aside $104,000 to do the public facility renovation at the Samsonite Fire Hall, and I'm told that that project is, I believe, at the architects right now. And we also had a very successful visit from the HUD monitors earlier in the year. We had 2 minor technical findings that were cleared on site, and other than that, we had a clean bill of health. Our goals for the next year, we won't be able to do as much as we did this year because our funding has been cut by 15.8%. That's a drop of $110,000, almost $111,000. For our current funding is $700,121. The estimate right now, and we still haven't got the final number, but the estimate is $589,381. We're estimating that we'll have approximately $250,000 that we'll carry forward. We're estimating that we're going to generate about $20,000 in program income. So instead of being able to fund as many as 5 or 6 microenterprise loans, we might be able to fund 4. We hope we'll be able to fund 4. We think we'll do about a dozen rehabs. We're hoping that the housing market will come back enough to do 12 down payment assistance deals. We are going to be funding 13 public service grants again this year. However, we were able to level fund 3 of them. The other 10 will be getting less than they received this year. We will be funding, we are recommending funding 1 vacant building lot for Rutherford County Area Habitat for Humanity. We do not know at this point whether or not, or if and when, emergency solution grant money will be available. That's the homeless. Right now, we get our money through THDA, and they've told us that they haven't heard anything from HUD. So until they do, they're not even speculating.
That's emergency shelter.
Well, it used to be emergency shelter. In the new Hearth Act, emergency shelter grant is changed to the emergency solutions grant. We've been led to believe that what they're going to do, and we like this part. They're going to do more, put more emphasis on prevention than has been the case in the emergency shelter grant, and that's going to be a good thing if that indeed happens. What it all comes down to is that we will do the best we can for the people of Murfreesboro with what we get.
Questions for Mr. Callow regarding community development? If not, we'll go to the Gateway Fund. Mr. Crumley again?
Yes, sir. It is always good to repeat the story of the Gateway Fund, how this community had the vision and took the initiative to make the investment in roads and utilities and land to create a true gem in Middle Tennessee. The 2009 property tax assessment was over $132 million in new construction since the beginning of the Gateway, and that total does not include the non-taxable $256 million investment in Middle Tennessee Medical Center or the investment in the Embassy Suites and the adjoining convention center that are covered by in lieu of tax agreements. We put together a small budget of $30,000 of miscellaneous expense. If the opportunity comes where we need to spend some dollars for a potential real estate sale or other investigation of the land the city still holds, we were successful. We have not yet closed, but we hope to be before June 30th closed with MTMC on the corner of Thompson and Gateway for that parcel that City Council approved the sale of back late last year. Again, there are no specifics in our $30,000, but it is available if we need to take action to further a real estate sale.
The total debt that we still have out there?
Very good question. I'll have to look that up.
But we still own 80 to 100 acres of that original 400-acre.
It's closer to 100, Mayor.
Yeah.
So we still own 25%.
Yes, sir.
And we do occasionally receive a phone call from someone inquiring.
The land itself is actually paid for. It just, they owe general fund back now for the rest of the loan, but all the loans on the land have been paid off.
All right, thank you. All right, TML Loan Fund.
Mayor, this basically is just the remaining loan proceeds we have available from most of the old ones are monies we had to put up in deposit with the state for projects through Mr. Richardson for grants. The 2008 TML has almost been completely drawn down. There's a little bit left, and so we estimated about $626,000 to draw for next year. The 2010 TML was a lump sum, so it got drawn all at once, and we're spending it down, and that's why you see zero in next year's budget, and then showing fund balance to be used for the capital outlay projects of over $28 million. That is money already on hand, and we'll draw it down from the bank account as the invoices come in, which is for various things that you've approved through the CIP.
All right, questions regarding the loan fund, where those proceeds have gone or where they're going? If not, the Fleet Services Fund then. Mr. Hyatt, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Fleet Service Department set three main goals for this fiscal year: exceed 95% fleet availability. Our current fleet availability is 96%. Meet all inspection and preventive maintenance schedules. So far, for the first 10 months of this fiscal year, all PM services and inspections have been done on time or early 85% of the time. And three is turn around 95% of all repairs within 3 days. Our turnaround has averaged 48 hours for the first 10 months of this fiscal year. Now, to meet these goals in the coming fiscal year, I'm proposing the elimination of the current hart supervisor position. This position will be replaced with a full-time preventive maintenance technician position. And this position will be offered to the current part supervisor, and it is basically a budget-neutral item. With Fleet Services now centralized at the Public Works facility on Florence Road and the purchase and implementation of new fleet maintenance software in 2009, the parts inventory is now much easier to maintain, and the ordering process has been streamlined and automated. I feel this new position would be a much better expenditure of the labor dollars available. And if you will look at page 232, line item parts and lubricants, that's where our biggest increase has occurred. It's basically $365,000, two-thirds of which can be attested to Joey Smith at the Solid Waste Department.
And the general fund's giving you about the same amount.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But as our equipment and vehicles have aged, the repairs have increased, and the complexity of the repairs have also increased. So we're getting to more main components having to be either repaired or replaced is what's driving this cost.
And the total number of vehicles is in the front?
Yes, sir. It's just slightly over 700.
And the age of those vehicles would be from new, relatively new, until
that we could get antique tags.
Old?
Some
mid-'80s?
Yes, sir. Mid-'80s. Some of our equipment that are more seasonal are leaf trucks that we just use for 3 months out of the year. They're probably the oldest.
And you do storage on site of those?
Yeah, at the Public Works facility, yes.
How many do you store on site?
We currently have about 5, I believe, stored there.
But total vehicles that are stored on site at Florence?
Well, we have, of course, the Rover buses, all the solid waste vehicles. We have some of the street department equipment. And then the police department has one of the lean-tos that they store some of their equipment there, the seized vehicles and the vehicles that were for the FAC team.
All right. Questions for Mr. Hyatt regarding fleet services? We're proud of you, and we appreciate you taking care of all of our rolling stock and everything else that walks through there that you need to do.
Thank you.
Sometimes, as I say, you underpaid for what you got hired to do. I mean, you overpaid for what you got hired to do, but underpaid for what you end up doing. Thank you. All right, this time that completes our budget review of these particular items, and there will be more, and I believe that will be on May the 25th that we will resume. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
May the 25th. At this time, you have before you your consent agenda. Are there any questions regarding the consent agenda? Now would be a good time to bring those up. If there are no questions regarding consent agenda, I'll accept a motion at this time.
Move we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. Motion and second to accept the consent agenda. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly. Ms. Gels Harris. Aye. Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. You have the minutes of the May 5th regular meeting before you. Are there any changes or additions or corrections? Then is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and second to approve the minutes of May 5th. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Consider for consider for passage on second reading an ordinance to rezone 15.5 acres to highway commercial CH district, 13.4 acres to residential multifamily 16 RM16 district, and 12.9 acres to single-family residential 15 RS15 district along Warrior Drive and New Salem Highway.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second on second reading. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. This time we'll consider for passage on second reading again an ordinance to rezone Creekwood subdivision located west of South Church Street to a duplex residential RD district.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
At this time, we'll consider recommendations of the Planning Commission to schedule a public hearing to consider zoning change requests for property located east of New Salem Highway, State Route 99, and north of West Main Street, RS 8 to CH. Property located east of South Rutherford Boulevard and north of Chalice Drive, OGR, RM 16, RS 10 to CH Commercial Highway, and to amend the planned signage overlay PS District for 68.5 acres and to add 2.21 acres to the PSO for a property north of Medical Center Parkway and east of North Thompson Lane. You have a copy attached. Welcome, Mr. Adelot.
Thank you, Mayor Bragg. The Murfreesboro Planning Commission considered all those items that you just read during this regular meeting on May 4th. We need to schedule them for public hearings. I don't think that these items will take very long, as they did not have a whole lot of public participation at the Planning Commission level.
Ms. McGannon?
Mayor, I suggest June 9th.
You ready? That's the same night as your budget public hearing.
All right.
Question. Ms. McGannon, if we schedule a public hearing, how do you do that time-wise? As far as if we finish at 6 o'clock and we set the public hearing for, you understand what I'm asking?
Well, I would assume we will be having a regular council meeting
Yes.
at 7,
Okay.
so these would be set at the 7 o'clock time.
I was assuming it would be like tonight, and we may finish 20 minutes early, and then what do we do? for
Well,
that?
then we'll have a little respite.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Lyons could need a rest.
But the budget public hearing's not at 6, is it?
No.
It's at the regular
Yeah.
regular meeting.
I think right now we're anticipating having just a regular meeting that
Meeting at
night, not
7,
starting
yeah.
early.
All right, Alan.
But
Thank you, Mr. Young.
If not, Mr. Lyons can give
being
more
confused.
facts
No,
about
for helping
Abe
us clear
Lincoln
that
and fill the void.
What day did we want to set this?
June 9th.
June the 9th. That's a Thursday, 7 o'clock.
Hearing no objections, move to set a public hearing June the 9th.
Second. All right, you have a motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris. Aye. Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Adelot. This time we'll consider recommendations of the Murfreesboro City School Board with regards to approval of the low bidder, S&W Contracting Company, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, to install new lighting fixtures as specified in the Energy Efficient Schools Initiative Phase 2 renovations. Mr. Anderson, welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to be here this evening.
Sorry to keep you so late.
No problem. We ran this by you before on the energy efficiency grant. We had to go and change the scope of the project slightly because our original bid came in over bid, and so what we did was we changed some of the HVAC units out and added one additional school to the project, Northfield Elementary School. It did come in under budget now at $997,967. It was 4 companies bid on the project, so we are asking for approval of the construction contract before you tonight to the low bidder, which was S&W Contracting.
Questions for Mr. Anderson regarding this recommendation? If not, is there a motion we accept?
Move we accept the recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have lots of seconds, but we had a motion, so that counts. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Very much. Beer permit applications or beer permits.
Mayor, we have one tonight that's a special event for Oakland's Association to be held at 340 East Main Street, and that is our only one tonight.
All right.
What's the date on that?
May 22nd.
Move for approval.
All right. Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. You have before you a list of the statements to be considered for payment. Are there any questions regarding that list?
No question. I move we pay the statements.
Motion to pay the bills, is there a second?
Second.
And a second, thank you. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. I recommend to you Jason A. Jones to the Cable TV Commission at this time.
Move we approve the mayor's recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Gelly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, is there other business to come before the council?
I just got a quick question for
Mr.
Mr. Lyons. Mr. Lyons, the Braves and the Phillies play this weekend. Who won the series?
Turn out.
I believe the Phillies won Friday night.
Okay, all right.
Was the question series or was it
I think the
Friday
question
night?
was serious. I think
Serious,
you answered
yeah.
that the way Miss McGannon would.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor.
Did you have a question regarding this?
No.
All right. Anything else from the council, from staff? If not, you're adjourned.